We are all a work in progress, especially when it comes to our careers. As a student myself, I know the path ahead is not always clear, and that's what makes it yours to shape. I'm Jay, and this is Careers in Progress, where I chat to people across industry, alumni, and the world of work to break down how careers actually come together so you can feel more confident shaping your own path.
Today's episode is in celebration of Wear It Purple Day, and we are focusing on the LGBTQIA+ inclusion in the workspace, what it looks like in practice, why it matters, and how we can all help create environments where people feel respected, supported, and be able to be themselves in whatever way feels comfortable for them. We also know these conversations can look different for everyone. Some people are very open about their identity at work, while others navigate it more privately depending on their environment, safety, or comfort. And all of those experiences are valid. It's also a topic many people want to understand better, but don't feel confident navigating or talking about. I am keen to learn today as well, and someone who does not have an expertise in this area. But to help us unpack some of those questions, we're joined by Chelsey Stephen, who is co-chair of National Australia Bank's National Pride Committee and works in AI for HR at NAB. Chelsey, welcome to Careers in Progress. I am thrilled to have this conversation with you today.
Thank you, Jay, for having me. It's lovely to be along, and I'm thrilled to have this conversation with you as well.
Thank you so much. Now, before we dive in, I love to start off the podcast on a slightly different note. Please tell me something that feels like a work in progress in your life or career right now.
Oh, that is a good question, and I've been having a good old think about what I wanted to say to this one, because everything is a work in progress, Jay, everything. Trying to help establish AI in our HR tools and systems for our 40,000 colleagues. In the NAB Pride Committee, we've just welcomed 8 new committee members, and we're getting them all up to speed and making sure that the committee is ready to go again, with a strategy refresh. At home, we're 10 months into our new house, so, there's always work in progress there. The second you buy a house, you are forever doing work and renovation on it. So I don't think I could say one thing that's a work in progress. I think everything is a work in progress.
Now, talking about your journey in NAB, it has spanned nearly 20 incredible years now, and you've worked across people and culture, employee experiences, and transformation, and shown passion for the inclusion and belonging space. So, Chelsey, I would like to start with your journey and how you first got yourself involved in this field.
Absolutely. So, as you said, 19 years ago, I started with the bank, almost 20. At the time, I was moving back to Melbourne from Ballarat, and I was looking for a role to get a foot in the door, build that resume up, look nice and strong, and stumbled across some work with NAB in their market research center. They needed experienced team leaders to help out, and I went, you know what? That's something I can do. I haven't done anything in market research, but I know how to lead people. I can get involved with that. And as they say, the rest is history, and 20 years later, I am now found kind of my niche and my spot in colleague experience, in making things better for our 40,000 colleagues, and helping out in the pride space and making sure that everyone can be their true, authentic selves at work.
Now, just kick us off, where do you think is the best place to even start when we talk about LGBTQIA+ inclusion at a workplace?
Absolutely. So a lot of people think inclusion is a big, overarching thing that's really hard and really difficult. But in reality, inclusion is lots of little moments stuck together. So it's having your pronouns on your email signature. It's introducing yourself with your pronouns. It's having a pride sticker or a visible pride, T-shirt or lanyard or a pin. It's little steps showing active allyship that makes such a big difference to the community. It's opening up that conversation and making people feel welcome and safe. That is the biggest step forward that any organization can make to make people feel welcome and included.
So what does your involvement in this space look like today?
So as co-chair with the Pride Committee, I spend a lot of time connecting with the different stream leads, talking to them about the work and the strategic focus that they're working on. So that's a lot of fun, getting to see across all the different elements of what we're doing. But then it's also working with executives and senior leaders about getting additional funding or support to drive some bigger initiatives. It's working within people and culture with the inclusion and diversity teams to help make sure, for example, our talent team is doing work around inclusion and diversity training specifically, or making sure that we're finding opportunities for emerging LGBTQIA plus talent so that they can grow and develop their careers. It's doing and assisting with training for leaders and allies to make them understand why it's so important and why they need to be involved. And then it's fun things like getting to come and talk to you and spreading the word.
Of course.
And, Pride isn't all strategy and policy and filling out things. It's also connection and community. And sometimes it's just hopping on our internal Viva, which is kind of like Facebook for work, but it's a Microsoft product. And just having a check-in on what the community is doing and liking some posts, giving some love, being present and being around can make such a big difference.
Absolutely. As I say, it's always good to ask, are you okay?
Absolutely.
Now, the fact that your journey has spanned over 20 incredible years, do you think your perspective about workplace inclusion has changed over time?
Oh, absolutely it has. So when I first joined NAB, there was not a Pride committee. So it's something that started over time. When I first started with NAB, the marriage plebiscite hadn't happened yet, right? My relationship with my wife wasn't legal, when you think about it that way. I couldn't get health insurance in a policy with my wife at the time. We actually went to Canada in 2009 and got married because it was legal in Canada, but it wasn't legal in Australia. So if you think about the world and the landscape when I first joined NAB, completely different. And, when the Pride community started up, I definitely joined, but I wasn't actively involved because I didn't feel that I had the capacity or time to get involved at that point in time. And I didn't quite understand at that time, so we're talking 10, 11 years ago, what the difference was of being active in the community. I knew the community was important and I knew that it was there and I knew that, it was good to be involved, but it took a people leader, Wes Travers, if he's watching or listening, hi Wes. It took him having a conversation with me about, Chelsey, you're doing really good things in your career, but you've got some capacity now. Maybe look at giving back to the community. Look at getting involved. And his advice and his counsel is what gave me the push to actually reach out to the Pride community at that point. And this was 7 years ago, to go, hey, I've got some time and capacity. How can I help? The other thing that I was reminded of at the time is if you sit back and wait for someone to ask you to get involved, you're never going to be asked. The first step for inclusion is always stepping up and stepping in. And I can guarantee it, any employee resource group, so NAB has 5 of them, any of them will willingly take any and all assistance if you're willing to step in and help out.
Are you proud of your actions that you've taken over time?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So my journey with the Pride community is I started as treasurer in the committee. So that was just keeping an eye on the budget, helping out. But then that expanded because, let's be honest, being treasurer is just about keeping the budget. I then had a little bit more capacity. I went, okay, how else can I get involved? And during COVID lockdowns, that was some drag bingo and drag trivia and, some Zoom events and getting involved that way. But then after that, it was like, okay, what else can I do? What else can I get involved with? And the opportunity presented itself to act as co-chair back in the committee. This was 5 years ago, while both co-chairs had left NAB. And that gave me a taste of where I am today. And that made me go, this is something I absolutely want to be doing, but I'm not ready just yet. I had a 3-year-old at the time, and that was a little bit too much pressure, and I had to be respectful of my time and effort and energy. And then I helped recruit 2 amazing co-chairs, Laura and Julie, who have since left NAB, both of them, unfortunately. And when Laura left NAB, the opportunity presented itself again, and I went, right, this is the time. I'm ready to step in. I'm ready to get involved. And 2 years ago, I became co-chair of NAB Pride, and that has been the absolute cherry on my career at NAB. That is the cherry on top, without a doubt. Getting to lead this community and be involved and be that voice, talking to executive leaders and wearing my Pride t-shirt every day and being that voice and that spokesperson for the community to say, hey, I'm here, I'm loud, I'm proud. You don't have to struggle. You can be your true authentic self at work and walking the talk.
That is an incredible journey. So, Chelsey, I would love to dive into some of the questions that have come in directly from our students. So, we recently asked our students on social media what they feel least sure about when they're entering a workplace. And by far, one of the biggest responses we've heard was how much of myself I should be sharing at workplace. I think that's an interesting one because we hear the phrase bring your whole self to work all the time. But tell me something, what does that actually look like in real world, in like practice?
Absolutely. And I'll start this by saying everyone's journey and everyone's experience will be completely different, right? I can only talk to my lived experience and what I've observed and felt from other people. But for me, I made a choice when I joined NAB 20 years ago that I wasn't going to be closeted. I was going to show up and I was going to be me. I was in a comfortable relationship with my wife. At the time, she was just my girlfriend. And I went, I'm not hiding this about myself. And thankfully, everyone I've interacted with, everyone I've dealt with at NAB has been amazing about it. Absolutely love that. But that's not the experience that everyone has. And I acknowledge and respect that. And a lot of people do feel that lack of support or that lack of inclusion. So you have to still, unfortunately, in this day and age, you have to read the room. You have to do what's comfortable and what feels psychologically safe for you. And you have to make the best decision with the choices that you have available. And for some people, that will be not being their full selves at work. But the research is pretty outstanding. If you can come to work and be your whole self, you are more productive. You are happier. The research shows that being able to be yourself at work is incredible. We received some recent survey results, and of the 500-odd NAB staff that were surveyed as part of the Australian Workplace Equality Index, only 63% of our staff felt comfortable to be out at work, of those that identified. To me, that figure is not high enough. It's nowhere near high enough. I would love that 100% of our staff feel comfortable to be their full, true selves at work. So that's one of the things I'm really, truly passionate about. But I can understand entering the workforce, how that can be really challenging and really confronting. So one of the things that can help when you're looking for work and you're trying to work out whether you can be your full self at work is, as I just mentioned, the Australian Workplace Equality Index is an Australian-based standards that over 200 organizations subscribe to, and they get assessed and ranked annually on how they're doing. Their results are public. So they'll tell you whether someone is bronze, silver, gold, or platinum status. For the record, NAB has been platinum for the last 5 years. So we hold that highest gong. And that index tells you the minimum standards that these workforces have subscribed to, things like all-gender toilets, discrimination policies, gender transition leave, having senior leaders who are out and vocal and speaking that support. So this is a list of Australian corporations that have subscribed and put themselves up for assessment. Those are pretty safe places to be looking for employment.
Thank you so much. Since your response has obviously clearly summed up that there's no magic formula, it's about what feels comfortable and what feels more authentic. Now, one thing I've realized preparing for this episode is that a lot of people probably don't fully know what LGBTQIA plus inclusion translates to. Thinking specifically about job hunt, let's say a student is in the phase of looking for a job. What are some signs that a student can look to identify whether the organization the person is applying to is actually inclusive or not?
Absolutely. So, as I said at the start, a lot of it's the little signs, right? It's pronouns on email signatures. It's lanyards, it's stickers, it's pride pins. Those are all very subtle, visible signs of allyship. Checking the company's website that you're interviewing with. They should have an inclusive recruitment page. They should have information publicly available on their website about where they sit and how they feel. Checking, again, the Australian Workplace Equality Index to see if the company that you're interviewing for is listed there is another great way to tell. But also, yourself having visible signs of allyship on yourself as you're interviewing. You're going to pick up the clues pretty quickly as to whether they're inclusive or not in those first interviews.
Right. So if we go a stage ahead of job hunt, that takes us to the recruitment and onboarding. What signals as a candidate any particular applicant could take to understand whether the organization is genuinely living its inclusion values and not just talking about them?
Absolutely. So there's a couple really clear signs, but if you get to that onboarding stage, you've signed your contract, you've committed, you're getting into the system. So you're going to have to deal with it exiting probation if you're not finding these signs or you're not comfortable with it. But that's why probation periods exist, right? But little signs like being able to choose your pronouns in the HR system is a really good sign that a company's done the hard yards to make inclusion something that's real. Part of your induction training should include information about the employee resource groups or about the inclusion policies of that organization. And for us at NAB, we actually go along to Welcome at NAB sessions, all 5 ERGs, and talk about who we are, why we're here, what's important, and how to get involved. And I would hope that other organizations would be doing exactly that as well.
There are some incredible signs that an applicant could look for sure. Now, another strong theme from student was that inclusion conversation feels safest when there's room for honesty and curiosity. At the same time, a lot of people hesitate to engage in the LGBTQIA plus inclusion conversation work because they feel like they're worried about getting it wrong. So how do you create workplaces where people can keep learning and growing while still making sure the community members feel safe and respected?
Absolutely. This is something that we spend a lot of time as a committee talking about and thinking about and exploring different options. There is no silver bullet here. A lot of it's about what works best in the moment and what works best in the situation that you're dealing with. So in terms of creating that safe space, it's, again, role modeling that safe space. So for me, there's sometimes when I will get someone's pronouns wrong. I don't make a big deal. I don't make a big fuss. I just quickly correct myself, restate what I was saying, and then move on with the conversation. I may pick up with that person afterwards and give them a personal one-on-one apology, but not making a big deal about it is the most important thing, just correcting yourself and moving on. That's role modeling, living inclusive behaviors, even if you get it wrong. And I've watched senior leaders stand there, get it wrong, correct themselves, and move on. And that, to me, is a big sign that our leaders are doing the hard yards and they're living those values.
Thank you so much. Now, what do you think from NAB's perspective, what does that actually look like?
So for us, especially within the Pride community, we create a culture and a space where we call each other when we don't get it right. And we appreciate the feedback and we move on with that. We also have ally awareness sessions that are run from within the Pride community, not the IND team, where we have like an Ask Me Anything session where we have community members with lived experiences. So we make sure our training and education leads are actually members of the community and not allies, so that when they're in talking about some of these topics, they're talking about their lived experience, not somebody else's. So, and a lot of times they'll be really transparent and frank and go, as a gay man, I can't answer how that would feel, but I can tell you what I've observed or I can tell you what I've seen. So not trying to own other people's experiences, but acknowledging that those experiences are different.
So now up to this point, we've been talking a lot about individual experiences, how people decide what feels right for them, and how they navigate showing up at work. But the more I learn, the more I realize that inclusion isn't something that just sits with one person. It is all about how it's shaped by everybody around you. That includes my colleagues, leaders, and the broader workplace culture. So, but I think a lot of us are still figuring out what our role in that space actually looks like. So when we talk about allyship, what does that actually look like in the day-to-day life?
So as a member of the community, I also consider myself an ally of the rest of the community. I am one of 8 letters, right? I can't represent them all and I never will. But what I observed and saw from Julie, who was a previous co-chair, who was a mad, passionate ally, is a mad, passionate ally. She doesn't just stop being an ally because she's no longer with NAB, is she would take the time to listen. And that is one of the most important things that an ally can do. She would listen to the experiences. She would listen to the conversations. She would listen to the concerns. And then she would go, now, are you just venting or are you coming to me to problem solve for you? Because as an ally, I'm more than happy to step up and step in, because that's what we ask our allies to do, is to, when you hear someone saying disrespectful comments or using the wrong pronouns, the best thing an ally can do is to step in and go, hey, that's not on. That's not okay. Because as a member of the community, to always have to be the one that's looked at or looked on to step up and step in, having allies take some of that mental load is amazing. But also then respecting the fact that you don't have that lived experience as an ally. You're just there for support and to be a big cheerleader, which we need as many cheerleaders as we can get, if I'm going to be completely honest.
Now, Chelsey, from your experience, if some team members wants to make sure it's a safe space for the other team members, specifically about the LGBTQIA plus employees in the team, how can a person do it without making it look like performative and without overdoing it or trying to make it look forced?
We ask our allies to listen, to understand that there's many different lived experiences, and to be that voice in the conversation when needed.
So now for the people who want to be supportive allies, but are kind of worried about saying the wrong things, which includes myself in this, what advice you will have here to offer?
Okay, so if you're not sure how to become an ally or how to start that journey, it's, as I said before, the little steps. So update your pronouns everywhere that is available to you. So at NAB, I think there's 4 different places you can put your pronouns visible. That is a little bit of tech admin, and then it's done, right? But that is the biggest, most visible sign you can give. Next is lean into events and conversations. Volunteer, put your hand up. If you sit back and wait for the Pride community to ask you to come help, we're busy enough. We're not gonna take the time to invite you in. But if you put your hand up and say, hey, I want to help, I want to get involved, where can I, be involved? We're absolutely going to welcome that help with open arms.
So considering you're a proud member of the community, I would love to ask you this. Looking ahead of the LGBTQIA plus inclusion in the future of work, what are you most optimistic about?
I am most optimistic, and I really hope that I see this, not necessarily in my working career, but in my daughter's working career, that the use of pronouns, the point of inclusion just becomes part of the day-to-day. That's my hope and that's my ambition.
So much, some really helpful information. All right, this is honestly one of my favorite parts of the episode. So ahead of this episode, we asked you on our Instagram stories what you want to know about inclusion at workplace. Now, I am in the studio with Chelsey to unpack those questions without any gatekeeping and just real and honest advice. A quick note that we will be answering from our own perspectives and in a way that feels comfortable for us. Conversations around identity and inclusion are deeply personal and there is no single way to experience or speak to them. So, Chelsey, both of these questions have come in from students who are in the same realm and are asking for advice. So students have asked us that your boss is not inclusive and won't use your pronouns and neo-pronouns. What should I do? I would just like to add a bit more information here. So we are a bit conscious that we're touching on some language and terms that listeners may have never heard in workplaces and might not fully understand yet. That includes neo-pronouns, which I had to do some research myself, which ahead of this pod episode. So for anyone wondering, these are pronouns some people use instead of traditional pronouns like he, she, or they, because they feel more confident or aligned with their identity. Like all pronouns, using them respectfully is about recognizing and affirming how someone wants to be addressed. So, yes, Chelsey, what are your thoughts on the questions that have come through?
So I need to start by saying I don't have the lived experience of being misgendered or mispronounced in my working life. I thankfully, or not so thankfully, depending on which way you look at it, pass as a cisgendered female. That is the reality. So cis means I look and present like a female, just for anyone who's catching up with the education here, because we are using a lot of new terms here for some people. So my lived experience isn't this question, and that's okay, because the way I'm kind of thinking about it is if another member of the community came and asked me for advice. So that's the way I'm going to approach it, Jay. First and foremost, if there's a difference between someone accidentally using the wrong pronouns and deliberately not using the right pronouns. And you might have to approach the situation with a little bit of curiosity to understand whether it's intentional or deliberate, or whether it's actually just an accident. Because if it is an accident, then there's a big education piece here for the person, and you come to it from a place of understanding, helping them out. Now, you may not be feeling comfortable to have that conversation with that people leader or that boss in that situation. My best advice there, and the advice I'd give anyone, is find an ally that you're comfortable having that conversation with and see if they will go with you to your boss to have that conversation, or if they'll have the conversation with your boss on your behalf. My advice would be have the conversation with the ally and your boss. Don't let the ally take the lead there. Just have them there as support. But if you don't feel comfortable, and if that doesn't feel like a comfortable situation, and if they are deliberately misgendering you or misusing your pronouns, your gender is actually a protected attribute under the Human Rights Commission. So it's actually workplace discrimination, and that isn't okay. Now, I know what I would do, in the middle of my career. I know how I would approach that and how I would feel comfortable to deal with that. But a lot of your listeners are not 20 plus years into their career, Jay. So I had a good long think about what advice would I give to someone who's just starting out? And there's no right answer here. It's about everyone's comfort levels and what they're wanting to do. And this is deeply personal for everyone. So this is, your students came up with a hard-hitting question. I had a lot of conversations with members of the community about how they would approach it as well. So you're not just getting my advice, you're getting the collective NAB Pride advice on this. So if you feel comfortable in your organization and you feel like you're going to be there for a long time, I personally would dig in my heels and I would report it to HR, because it is workplace discrimination if you find that it's deliberate. If you don't feel happy that you're going to get the result that you're looking for, my best advice would be go looking for somewhere else to work. Start that job hunt now. Because if you can't face into that difficult conversation with that people leader and you think they're deliberately misgendering you and you don't want to step in and try to resolve it through, HR matters or ER matters, your best bet is looking for an organization where you will be respected and they will use your correct pronouns. Like I said, there is no easy answer here, but it's a history of people stepping in and having those difficult conversations as to why it is a protected attribute and why it is something that I can say, it's not okay. Your workplace should be better than that. But it's not always easy from a personal safety point of view or a psychological safety point of view to have that conversation. So you have to do what feels best for you in that situation.
Thank you, Chelsey. I love your approach with answering these questions, since you're not giving us a response based on every single person, but just on your personal experiences. To finish us up, I would love to ask you for a recommendation that you can leave with us today, something that has helped you in your career or mindset lately.
Absolutely. And again, you'd given me forewarning that you're going to ask for a recommendation. And mine's going to be a little left of field, I think. So one of the things that I've done, because I do spend a lot of time at work, volunteering for the Pride community, as a mum, I do a lot of different things. One of the things I make time for is connection with friends. And what that looks like is we have a group where we get together at least once a fortnight, if not more often, and we play board games. So it's non-digital. It's, a group of 5 or 6 of us coming together, putting a game on the table and just enjoying. Do I win all the time? No. Do I win some of the time? Again, no. Does that matter? No.
No.
It's just about doing something with people who I'm comfortable with and taking that break away from work, from pride, from being a mum. It's just an opportunity of connection. And that is my biggest recommendation I can give, is find your tribe, find your group outside of school, work, all those other things. Find your way to connect with people who matter to you.
I'm hosting a games night right after this, but thank you so much again for taking time out for this conversation. It means a lot to us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Jay. It's been absolutely wonderful having a chat with you today.
Hopefully today's episode has helped make conversations around LGBTQIA plus inclusion feel a little more approachable and given you a better understanding of how we can all contribute to workplaces where people feel safe, respected, and be able to be themselves. Whether you're still learning, asking questions, or figuring out how to support others, hopefully this episode has reminded you that inclusion is something we all have a role in creating. And if you got something out of this, share it with a friend who may need it, and do not forget to refer to the show notes that will link you through to My Deakin Talent for more career resources. And that's a wrap on Season 1 of Careers in Progress. It has been an absolute pleasure being your host. It is a goodbye for now, but we hope not forever. Bye-bye.